To all who come to this happy podcast, welcome to FreshBaked Presents, a happy place where each week we combine our imagination with our experience to discuss, challenge, and explore all things Disneyland. I am Ron Berner. That is, of course, Mr. FreshBaked himself, the indelible David Erickson.
How's it going, FreshBaked?
And this is the FreshBaked Presents podcast, episode 6. Thank you for joining us, where today we talk about Disneyland as a 360-degree experience, the subtle and brilliant ways Disneyland sets the bar. We'll reach into the mailbag to answer your questions and, of course, our 5 things Disneyland. David, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ron. How are you?
I'm living the dream.
Living the dream.
Living the dream. David, after a few, we'll say a slew of curious corporate decisions as of late, Disneyland isn't perfect in all areas. We know that. But they still do set the bar as, I guess you could say, the unequaled industry leader in many other ways. Disneyland is pretty exceptional at what they do, despite some misguided narratives you may see on Twitter and social media. Curious decisions that they may have made recently, or just flat out mistakes that they made, in our opinion. But let's bring into the spotlight some of the wonderful and magical things that Disneyland does that we collectively as a public either take for granted or don't even realize that they're doing. The 360-degree Disneyland experience that really taps into all of our senses. It hits us emotionally, and I think art can be defined as a creation which inspires an emotional response. And when you think of it in that terms, Disneyland is a masterclass in art. So, David, knowing that already and hearing me say that, what is something that immediately jumps out to you that makes you think that Disneyland is exceptional at that?
Well, I think one of the things that you said that really struck I connected with was that there are a lot of things at Disneyland that we do take for granted, that we forget how exceptional they are, which is one of the reasons why I trumpet Main Street as much as I do, because Main Street is taken for granted, I believe, because one of my favorite things about it is just how it sets the stage for going to the park, and it gets you feeling a certain way. And so I make a point every time I go to Disneyland to really kind of feel and absorb what's happening to me when I walk down Main Street when I first get to the park, while at the same time observing and noting that there are plenty of guests who kind of just are in a hurry to get to wherever it is that they're going, at the expense of not enjoying Main Street the way that Walt intended. And that's one of the reasons why I say that phrase so often whenever people ask me for advice about going to Disneyland. One of the first things I say almost every time is don't be in a hurry. Right. Don't be in a hurry, because there's so much Disney to take in that has nothing to do with Space Mountain or Indiana Jones or Galaxy's Edge. There are qualities to Disneyland that you just need to, when they, you got to stop and smell the Disneyland, as it were. Yep. Main Street is that place for me. It's a place that gets overlooked and disregarded. People don't even think of it as a land, and I think I've said that on this podcast before. And when you think about it in terms of lands, it's my favorite land. Main Street sets the table for everything, and whoever it was, however that land was conceived, however Main Street was conceived. Between the tunnels and Town Square, the actual Main Street and the hub. Come on. The hub, Ron. The hub is genius. The hub is genius. At the end of Main Street, they set this whole thing up for you. And at the end of Main Street, they give you this hub. And there's like, now, pick a journey, guest. Where would you like to go today? You can go over here. You can follow these spokes, and you can go on an adventure. You can go to a frontier. You can go, a fantasy, or you can see the tomorrow. I mean, it's perfect. It is genius. So for me, that's, in response to that question, that is the first thing I think of, is that journey from the tunnel, Town Square, Main Street, and the hub.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points there. When I initially started thinking of this, I started jotting down things left and right. But to your point about Main Street, like the first thing I think of is storytelling, and
Hmm.
storytelling is done as a visual element in Disneyland. It's also done. You've also touched on the smell. You smell
Yeah.
Disneyland, as it were. You said they pump in the smells of pastries, of ice cream, of those things as you're walking by. So they're tapping
Yeah.
into it's kind of like that old drive-in movie theaters. Let's all go to the snack bar. Let's all
Yeah,
go
yeah.
it's almost a play on that where they're doing it, and what they're doing is creating that which we're not even aware of. So many people are not aware that they're pumping in the smells. We think we're smelling authentic, genuine smells, which we are also. But how that touch is, of course, they're trying to get you to buy their stuff, but it's also creating
I don't
such
mind.
a. I don't mind either because it adds to the art, it adds to the storytelling, it
Yeah.
adds to the essence, and I appreciate it. I'm not mad at it. I appreciate it. I
Yeah.
love that they go to those levels. And the other thing I wanted to say that you touched on Main Street, um, unless you're a Disney file like ourselves, a lot of people don't realize. So I come from the film industry, and in the film industry, the opening credits of a movie sets the tone for the film. Notice how credits are. The font and everything that they use in the credits will tell you the tone of the movie, whether it's a horror film, a comedy, or fun, whatever it is. That does that. What Disneyland does is all the windows are painted with, or not painted, well, yeah, painted, the decal
Yeah.
designed, and it's like opening credits, and it's also like closing credits of a film where all the people that contributed
Yeah.
are there. So you're walking down Main Street, getting in this perspective. Force perspective is another masterful
There you
thing that
go.
they do. But you're walking down Disneyland, you see that castle that looks so huge, you see the building, you see everything that you see, but you're also going through the credits of what created that. And I find that artistic brilliance.
I agree. I agree. And you mentioned the 360 experience, and that's something that again, we kind of take for granted because it's sort of happening. I don't want to say subliminally, but it's not in the front of our consciousness. It's in the back a little bit, but they're hitting you on all of your senses. They're hitting you, like you said, with the smells. Obviously, the sights. You can see Disneyland happening,
Right.
but staying on Main Street, even just the clip clop of the horses, the Dapper Dan singing, perhaps the bells ringing, or the omnibus doing the ayuga,
Right.
and then even just your feelings. Disney, I mean, better than, and they do this in their films too. Disney is very basic. It's rudimentary almost. They hit you on these core feelings that it's not too complicated. There's fear or there's surprise, there's love or whatever,
Right.
but you feel the sentiment of what of the expression that is happening when you walk down Main Street, and you feel I don't know, for me the feeling is love and sort of kind of being hugged almost by Disneyland.
Right.
When I get that, that's the feeling that I get.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it even extends further than that. When you talk about things that are taken for granted, they hug you and love you and treat you with respect in a way when you think of the cleanliness. Like Disneyland
Yeah.
is immaculately clean, I think. I am
Above all
blown
others.
away. I am blown away. And we all know the story of Walt when he went to a carnival. He wanted to see how long it took somebody to walk before they discarded their trash on the ground just simply because they couldn't find a place to put it. And he had some eyes at 25, 30 feet. I've heard both.
Yeah.
I've read both. So at Disneyland, there's a garbage can every 25 feet. And it's true. It's basically true. You can't see one that's not anywhere. You see the groundskeepers. Landscaping is another thing that they are phenomenal at. You see the groundskeepers and you see the flowers and the plants and the trees, and it is remarkable how pristine things are. Like just simply the ground is.
Yeah. They take very good care of the grounds, and not only that, but they curate those grounds seasonally. It's one thing to have pretty looking flowers and plants
Yeah.
throughout the land, but how about doing it per the season? How about changing them out every couple of months and showing the love and care that they do? How about growing topiaries in the back in backstage so that they could have new topiaries ready for Small World, or anywhere else they might need them, because sometimes they just put a hedge, a rectangular hedge out there somewhere. They really put a lot of thought and a lot of care into that, into the groundskeeping. And there's a matter of fact, they did a whole, the tours that they used to do. That one of my favorites was the horticulture tour that Disney did, where they just showed you what they were trying to, like, you go to Snow White and there's a whole specific kind of plant that they're putting there, or foliage or whatever,
right,
in order to evoke a certain feeling of, well, back when it was scary, it was designed, the landscape was designed to add to the scariness of the attraction. It was dark and kind of old looking, or that kind of thing. And that's throughout the park. That's Snow White was just an example, but they do that in every land.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. No,
it really is super cool. And even going as far as having edible plants in Tomorrowland, because
Tomorrowland, forget it.
That is great.
That's still a thing too, by the way. That's still a thing.
It really is. And I've looked at lots of them, and it's hard to believe, but I trust them. When you think of landscaping in other areas that it creates, in my mind, because all of this is one gigantic art mosaic, and there's so many ways to add this all up. But a couple of things, like, since landscaping was brought up, it brings sightlines into play, which are very strategic throughout the park. And it also brings into play things like the Jungle Cruise. Like the Jungle Cruise, they literally put a jungle in Anaheim, and it's so good.
They sure did.
It's so good. You actually, especially with the vantage points that you get when you're on top, when in the queue, and you just start really looking into it, you're like, that's pretty great. It really is.
Rare is the time when I'm at Disneyland where I don't feel like I am completely in the time and place that they want me to be in. The Jungle Cruise is a perfect example. When you're in the Jungle Cruise, there's nothing else exists besides that jungle. On the Mark Twain, nothing else exists besides the Missouri River. When I'm on the Mark Twain, especially in the back half of it, it's exceptional. And everywhere you go, no matter what land you're in, Galaxy's Edge. People said, how can you put Galaxy's Edge right next to, Critter or Frontierland or whatever? And I'm just watch, wait to see what they do. You go to Galaxy's Edge right now, Disneyland doesn't exist. It doesn't 100%. Exist when you're in Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah,
the rest of it, I mean.
No, I was going to say that, where it feels, I think way back when we talked about it, it feels like a third park. And the only reason I word it like that is because I'm not in Disneyland. And when I leave Galaxy's Edge and I go back into Disneyland, it's kind of like, whoa, like, it's so different. Like, you are really taken away when you're in a Galaxy's Edge.
That's land transitions, and Galaxy's Edge is probably the peak of their expertise in land transitions. But I mean, we can start the three tunnels are exceptional. The transition, the sounds, and the vistas that your eyes see when you walk through each of those. Well, I guess the Critter Country transition to Galaxy's Edge is in a tunnel, but it's still my favorite. The first time I walked down that path from Critter Country to Galaxy's Edge, I nearly lost myself. I mean, it was breathtaking. But think about it: the transition from Adventureland to New Orleans Square is seamless. It's as if it's a crossfade. It's a visual crossfade. Same thing with New Orleans Square to Critter Country. It's a visual crossfade.
Yeah, it's genius. They're exceptional at it. The laser blasts in Galaxy's Edge is like they cut into that rock to get you into it.
Yeah.
It's great. It almost looks like spaceships crash there, creating this pathway to give us access to it.
Yeah.
I do agree as well with the Critter Country entry. It's like you're going to this place, and it feels like it, even though you're walking, and it's like you're just slowly getting closer and closer, and things start adding up. It's all that artistic mosaic, like I had mentioned. Like every single detail. Again, the movies. One thing I learned in the movies is when you see a tablecloth on a table, there could be a scene and there's a tablecloth on there, right? That tablecloth was hand picked specifically for that scene because everything matters. Everything means something. And Disneyland really does that everywhere. And the sights and sounds and smells of like we mentioned, Main Street, walking down Main Street, something that occurred to me on top of everything that we had already mentioned is you can see, this is also art, where you can see through the window. I don't even remember which place it is right now where they're creating candy. They're making candy, and you could see them doing it and pouring the chocolate on it.
Ron,
that's cool.
Let me stop you because it's still to this day, 9 years that I've been going to the park almost every weekend. I go into the Candy Palace and I watch them make, toffee or whatever, and I'm like, wait, they're gonna put that in a bag. They're going to put that in a bag, and they're going to sell it to me. They literally make that candy right there in the candy shop, Ron.
Yeah, I know. It is cool. And there's something Willy Wonka magical kid in you no matter what age you are. I find myself if they're so good at it, they do it in a matter of seconds, how they twist. They know what they're doing, obviously.
Oh, yeah, experts.
But it's so much fun to watch, and it's such a cool aesthetic that they add. And all of these things, I think on some level we notice it and we appreciate it, but on another level entirely, we take it for granted where we know it's there and we just kind of like walk past it or whatever. But it's just all adding to the aesthetic of what it is that they do, and it's everywhere. I mean, there's not when you think of it in these terms, you can't go more than a couple feet without some aesthetic specific thing like tapping into us, and I think that's amazing.
Throughout the entire park.
Right, and then there's some other areas. Let's see, what was some other area? Anything come to mind with you? Food for sure is art. That's a whole art show in and of itself. In terms of, I think their menus. I think what Disneyland offers in the culinary space is pretty extraordinary. It really is.
They especially lately. It wasn't that long ago when it was chicken sandwiches and cheeseburgers,
Right.
but lately they have really been going for it on the menu changes, and they're not holding back, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that because, especially for us locals here at Disneyland, who, we need that in order to sort of keep the magic and mystery going, or whatever reasons to go. And I really appreciate that they try as hard as they do to keep bringing in new foods, and especially when it comes to the seasons, like Halloween and Christmas.
Yes.
You could other parks they kind of do, they kind of don't. I mean, I've never been impressed with food at Universal. I can't name a single dish at Universal that I'm like, I got to go, except for maybe butterbeer. But other than that, I mean, I can't think of a single thing that I remember eating at Universal. Knott's is a little bit better. They have some, they got the barbecue, which is great. But you really got to try hard. But it's easy for Disney. It's easy for Disney to name just a bunch of stuff that they can do great.
Yeah, it is, and it just looks so darn cool too. Like everything that they do it's. You feel like the chefs are artists, like literally, because like every candy apple design, whether it's desserts or actual food, it's amazing. The other thing that I was going to touch on is like things like within the park that help us that we're not aware of, like either queues or crowd control. I would consider Disneyland to be a master of crowd control.
They're the master of both of those things you just mentioned, almost to the point where it kind of bums me out that Disney is trying to get people out of the queues these days and, using virtual queues because they're forgetting what they're best at, and that's queues. I mean, the queue as entertainment. Nobody does. I mean, again, you can cite specific individual attractions that are pretty good at that in other parks, but Disney does it across the board for all of their attractions, and that's part of the experience. The Galaxy's or the Rise of the Resistance queue, the Smuggler's Run queue was fantastic.
You just
Indiana
took a both out of my
Jones.
mouth.
I mean,
Yep.
Indiana Jones is probably the greatest achievement in managing guests that I could ever conceive. I don't know how they did it. I really don't.
Yeah, I agree. I think the queues are phenomenal. Well, most of them are phenomenal. This is also where you they get buried for things that are, like Monsters Inc. and things like that, because they have set a standard. The standard is the standard, and when you give me something that is not the standard, you're gonna get buried, and we're gonna pile on you for it.
Yeah, Disney does suffer from being so good at things that when they don't do it right, people are like,
Yeah,
it's like
right. For sure, and I do think the queues are a part of the experience, and it's so funny that you mentioned. I mean, I know it's their most recent, so of course you would expect it on point to be very good. But oftentimes, Champ and I will go through Galaxy's Edge, and we always get Rise of the Resistance, and we have had no problems getting that for several months.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
And the queues, we always talk about it. We're like, let's just go, like, we'll see. It's like for Smuggler's Run, it's like 30 minutes or whatever, and 45 minutes, and we're like, who cares? Let's go. It's like enjoyable.
Yeah,
I enjoy.
It's a 40-minute show.
I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Rise of the Resistance is just out of control, so it's hard to compare anything to that because they just did that so well. I actually, of course, Indiana Jones is amazing. The Jungle Cruise is enjoyable.
I love the Jungle Cruise queue.
Yeah, most of them. I have no complaints of any queue except for one, but I digress.
I'm trying to think.
Only because I got buried for Peter Pan a couple. Years ago.
That's right. Well, all the Fantasyland queues were not built for 21st century guests. I'll say that.
That is true. When you look at the other ones like Pinocchio, I feel like everything just moves so quickly. Other than Pinocchio, so maybe that's. I'm sorry. Other than Peter Pan, but like Pinocchio and Snow White and Alice, like all of those, something about them. They're just enjoy. I don't think of them as bad experiences. I guess I'm perfectly okay and perfectly content and fine standing in line for all of them. I was gonna ask about other things like accommodations, kind of along the same lines with crowd control, but like what they do with the strollers, which nobody's ever going to be perfect at, but the ability to provide assistance for the handicap, things of that nature.
Yeah. Hey, here's the thing. Speaking to that point about strollers, it reminded me. Take a minute when you're walking down Main Street and you're watching a horse-drawn streetcar go down with the horse, and you got the guests sitting in the thing. Almost every single time you're going to see a cast member pushing a stroller. Because you can't bring the stroller onto the thing, so what do? They have a cast member walk your stroller. They follow you on the streetcar, pushing your stroller for you, and they meet you there at the other end with your stroller.
That is such a beautiful segue. I did not know that. I had never thought of that, but that is that. Right. But that is such a huge point, because one of the things that I have on this list, and at the end I'll say every single one out loud, just because some are coming up during the call. But customer service, I mean, you could say plaids as one thing, but I've heard nothing but great. I've talked to plaids; they're phenomenal. But customer service in general, the cast members, when you need help, when I've needed help, like genuinely needed help, I'll even give a quick story. But when I've genuinely needed help, cast members have gone out above and beyond to help. A few years ago, I have an Android, so a few years ago they had issues with the Max Pass and the Android and all kinds of things, and they couldn't figure it out. So they talked to an engineer. The cast members, I went to one of the kiosks. They were so helpful in trying to solve it, and they're like, this is so weird. And they ended up getting a hold of an engineer. Come to find out, it was an Android kind of an issue. So they wanted to take my email information, and they said check in a few hours, like later in the day. Hopefully they can get it done. And they not only fixed it in the app, it all worked and it was all fixed. And they gave me several Max Passes because, of course, I couldn't use the ones I had early in the morning. Yeah. But they went above and beyond. Disney, and I think above and beyond is a good way to describe what they do. They will help you with anything and with a smile on their face, even though I know that it has to be a really, really tough job because people aren't as friendly as you and I.
When you mentioned cast, I almost felt bad. I felt guilty because when I started thinking about this topic, the very first thing I wrote down on my phone, was cast members. And here it is, we're 20 minutes into this podcast, and we hadn't started talking about cast members yet. I'm like, how is it possible that the greatest achievement in that Disney has ever, what they're known for, the thing that they are the very best at is customer relations and how the cast member, and again, not just the plaids but everybody from every single. I can't think of a bad exchange I've had with the cast members. As a matter of fact, just today, I was at the park doing my Toontown bit for Roger Rabbit, and while I was waiting for that to happen, I was on the Columbia to get coverage for something else, and a cast member there said, "Hey, let me ask you a question. And he said, "What's the one thing that you love most about Disneyland? What's the one thing that keeps you coming back? What's the one thing that is number one for you?" And I know it's cliche. It sounds cliche, but I said to him, I said, "You guys, you cast members are the best." He's like, "No, come on, be real. Don't do." And I'm like, "No, dude, I'm not messing with you." And it's like, I'm not trying to placate you or anything like that. They literally are the foundation for they are everything. They are why I go to Disneyland.
Yeah, they are amazing. They go above and beyond. They make the experience so much better, even when it's a frightening situation. I lost Champ. I am not going to win many Father of the Year awards, but I lost Champ several times because I always say the train's a trucking. So if you're on board or you miss out. So I lost Champ. He knows the drill. He's well versed, and he because of this situation like 5 years ago, he memorized my phone number now, but now he has his own phone. But anyway, I lost him, and he knew the drill was to go back to the last place that he remembers seeing us or seeing me, and I'll do the same exact thing. If that doesn't work, then just grab a cast member. So this happened, and he was young. He was 5-6 years old, and hey, you gotta be hey, listen, it's Disney Daddy boot camp in my house.
Hey, he's gonna be stronger for it, right?
Yes, right. So anyway, he did find a cast member, and I went to the little daycare place by the photo shop there on Main Street, and there he was, and they were so sweet, and they were playing with him, and they were like, "This happens all the time," or whatever. But he was so smart; he came right up to us and said, "I lost my daddy," and I was like, "That is amazing." The fact that they have a place there for that very thing. The fact that they have a place to bring your dogs if you want to. Yeah. They do things on such a exceptional level, and the cast members always a treat, always a joy every time you talk to them, and it almost feels like they enjoy a real conversation sometimes, because I feel in my experience just having a conversation with a cast member about just not asking them for help or not needing something from them, it almost feels like they light up. Like, yeah. I don't know. I enjoy it, and I enjoy them.
Yeah, they are on stage almost always. So to have an off-stage conversation probably would be, a welcome thing.
Right, and it happens also in places like PhotoPass, which is another thing that I think Disneyland is exceptional at. There's so many areas and so much to appreciate, and to me, the entire experience and every single thing. Even think of the berms. Disneyland. Again, something just popped in my head. It is built in such a way that it separates you from the outside world. That is amazing. That is genius.
A Disney creation, a Disney Walt Disney idea that I don't know why other parks still don't. I don't see other parks doing that.
I don't either. I think it's a volume thing versus a quality thing in some ways.
Well, yeah, they don't. You know what? That brings up another point, because it does feel like in some ways other parks just don't seem to care about that kind of thing.
They're like, they got that, so we'll do this. I do. I think all of these things that we mentioned come to bring together such an artistic experience, an emotional experience, and it's just so fantastic. It all speaks to one thing that I always say, and you say, I know other people say. It's like when people say, "What do you love so much about Disneyland in general?" It's like it's that thing that you can't define. I don't know how to tell people. There's that thing that I truly love, and I don't know how to share it with people. It's kind of like you get it or you don't. And if you're not there, if you haven't experienced, and when I try to get it to them, it's just like, I don't want to say cliche things like that happy place, but just to say there's a tone and a vibe and a feeling that you get when you're there that's really difficult to explain, but it just feels really good, and there's nothing wrong with that.
You either get it or you don't.
Yep. Other things, David, do you want to bring something up? Because I'll just go through some.
No, I think things. I covered my favorite, or not favorite things, but some of those qualities that I do enjoy the most about Disneyland. I got mine. Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. I definitely covered it because there's no end game to this. And,
no.
Some other things on the list that I wrote. going through it quickly. We did touch on most things. Fireworks, I think they're one of the best fireworks shows you'll see anywhere.
Does anybody else do fireworks?
I know. I'll say this: Angels Stadium Friday nights. I told you with I had a connection with the Angels, and Friday night fireworks at Angel Stadium is they do a pretty dang good fireworks show for when you think of baseball, or whatever. But outside of that, when it comes to parks, I don't know.
I can't think of any. There's no parades. Does Universal have a parade? Does Knott's have a parade? I'm only thinking California. Because I'm very biased. I'm local, and that's it. But I can't think of. No,
I can't either.
And we take it for granted. We're like, "Where's our fireworks? Damn it, we're owed the fireworks."
Like when it's a little bit windy, that's the thing. Oh. It's like, oh no, we might not get them.
Due to winds at high elevations.
Yes, exactly. A couple other things that I wrote down that I think they're great at, like the character meet and greet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all part of the essence, but it's just cool. It's just amazing that it's there, and I feel like that's certainly something I take for granted, and in all of these things in some way I take for granted, but at the same time I appreciate them all. But I often walk by characters and stuff, especially now that Champ's older and stuff. We walk by them, but I still love the heck out of them.
Me too.
Good stuff. Even construction walls, I think they do even when they're putting a Band-Aid on their park, they at least do it in a way that's not grotesque.
I don't mind a construction wall. That's for dang sure. But I'll tell you what. And another reason why I don't mind construction walls, besides the fact that I get to film that stuff, is that for me it represents potential. It's future. Right. It's when I see dirt, I see potential. I see wonder and magic on the way. Like it gets me excited. So I don't mind that at all.
I hear ya. All right, David. Well, that's a lot of fun things they do. Seasonal. Their seasonal transitions are amazing.
Yep.
We could go on and on. So many of these things just popped in my head as we were discussing, because it's one of the beautiful things about Disneyland is there's so much to it that makes it great, and so much to it that we appreciate. And it was fun to talk about those things. And I know. Let us know what we forgot, because I guarantee you there's dozens.
Sure.
There's dozens of things that I now that I have this list compiled, I want to add to it. David, this week there were several, more than most weeks, things that I found to be unbelievably interesting in this week in Disney history. Very, very fun stuff, and some not so fun, but I'm making it fun.
Okay.
Captain EO, David.
Your favorite show.
Opens in Tomorrowland. We'll get to that later. So to celebrate, this happened in 1986 to celebrate the arrival of the new 3D show, the film sensation, Disneyland. I did not know this. Disneyland, which is what makes these things interesting to me, is when I don't know them, I think they're very interesting. So, David, Disneyland held a 60-hour press party. They stayed open from September 19th, 10 a.m. to September 21st, 10 p.m. Each party guest received a coupon that was validated when they saw the film, and then they could redeem later for a complimentary Starfighter t-shirt. I did not. I mean, how cool. They prepared for it. Another thing Disneyland does well, the park operated for 3 straight days, so they cycled out attractions for safety checks to make sure everything was functioning. Mm-hmm. Then they continued to do that throughout those 3 days. Captain EO closed in April of 97 and is regarded still today as one of the first 4D films, which was the name given to a 3D film that incorporates the in-theater effects of like the lasers, the smoke, the wind, all synchronized to the film. Were you a fan of Captain EO, David?
Only to the extent of that I'm a fan of like bad movies and bad, I enjoy them because they're bad, because Captain EO was not good.
Let me ask you this. What year did you experience it?
I couldn't say. I didn't go to that thing. I didn't see it right away or anything like that.
But you were an adult.
Well, I would have been early 20s maybe, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I did see it in '86, or at some point in those days when it was brand spanking new or whatever. And of course, so much of things that we love and appreciate are as a result of being a child when we saw them. So I'm freaking 10 years old, so to me it was like the coolest thing in the world. And by the way, that was on the heels of Thriller.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it was like taking the world by storm when I don't know, it was just an interesting thing. By the way, I hadn't seen it. I don't think I probably only seen Captain EO twice during that those days, and I never saw it again. So that my memory is of a 10-year-old boy. Ever. I never saw it again. I didn't get back to the parks.
You didn't see it
when
when it came back?
I didn't go to the parks till it came back. I missed the 90s. I was catching touchdowns.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, David.
Yes.
This is fun for me because I love this guy. Donald Duck, September 16th, 1934, was introduced to the comic strips in the Silly Symphony Sunday edition. Some fun backstory that I know most of because I'm a Donald Duck fan. Donald may have made his first printed appearance in a Mickey Mouse Annual 3, which was published in 1932, which was a 128-page British hardback, and it listed Mickey and all of his then barnyard animal friends. In fact, most of those characters most of his friends ended up developing from that barnyard scenario. Among them was a duckling named Donald. Though this 1932 Donald did not look like the one that was introduced to all of us in Silly Symphony's The Little Wise Hen in 1934. It's a completely different looking Donald. That's why Donald's birthday is actually in 1934 from The Little Wise Hen, even though it was created before that. Donald made his printed debut in the newspaper comic strip adaptation of that cartoon. It was released between September and December 1934 in the Silly Symphony's Sunday pages. Donald then soon came to stardom and dominated the Silly Symphony strips in 36 and 37. So he was an instant sensation. Do you have, David, a favorite Fab Five character or just Disney character in general?
Well, I'm classic no matter what I do. I always sort of gravitate to, whoever the lead is. I'm a Mickey Mouse man. But I mean, I do appreciate Donald Duck. Absolutely.
Yeah, I could do a whole dissertation on Donald. I just love how he is do anything in the world for Daisy. He's very optimistic and yet very temperamental. He just had all the gamut of emotions. But you could say that about Mickey as well, because Mickey has, if you watch the shorts, he's been through it all. I love Mickey. Who doesn't love Mickey? Okay, David, couple more. 2001, September of 2001, the city of Marceline, Missouri began a 3-day celebration of the 100th anniversary of the birth of Walt Disney, which is interesting because his birthday is in December and this was in September. So, but anyway, more fun facts that I did not know. I knew of the museum in Marceline. I did know that. But a museum was created just for this 3-day experience in commemoration of what would have been Walt's 100th birthday. Once the festivities ended, so then would the museum. However, David, the exhibit's story resonated so strongly with fans that the museum's director kept its doors open ever since. It's been 20 years.
Really?
In fact, the concept of a Walt Disney tribute in Marceline was considered by the city of Marceline and entered into the docket in 1956. But Walt, we all know and love Walt, was not interested in being honored in a fine museum or with a statue in Disneyland, for that matter, during his lifetime. So it was more than 4 decades later, through the efforts of his family, that the Walt Disney Hometown Museum of Marceline was fully realized and founded at that event in 2001.
That's right.
Did you know?
Well, I knew about the statue thing. I know that he made a point of not wanting a statue, and they didn't build the one, the partner statue until after he passed. But I wasn't aware of the Marcelines thing. No.
No, I mean, I knew about the museum. I always wanted to go there because, like I said, I had friends in Missouri. So I was like, I want to go there. But I didn't know that. It's so interesting digging up these facts. Okay, here's a little fact that I think was particularly interesting to, everything that ever existed at Disney. Walt Disney's Mickey Mouse trademark application was granted September 18th, 1928. Walt trademarked and copyrighted Mickey Mouse in 1928. After 2024, Disney will not have any copyright protection for Mickey's original incarnation. Or will they? But Disney will still own the copyrights for later incarnations of the character and related trademarks. And what that means is in 1928, Mickey did not have gloves on. Mickey had only black eyes, and Mickey was black and white. So that is the copyright that if they lose, that's what they will be losing. So we will not be seeing a color Mickey. We will not be seeing the eyes, the triangle eyes, or anything other than what Mickey looked like in 1928's Steamboat Willie. Disney holds both copyright and trademark protections for Mickey. Copyright protection expires, trademark doesn't. So even after all significant Mickey copyrights have expired, Disney could potentially use a trademark law as a weapon against unauthorized Mickey Mouse products. And of course, I say all of this because it comes to light in terms of in the few years, 2024, where supposedly there's, everybody's concerned that they're going to lose them to the public domain. But really what Mickey Mouse did was build the kingdom. Mickey Mouse built everything. And I'll continue here. Disney's legal team might succeed in keeping Mickey from becoming rights free like other characters, because this has been precedented, such as Sherlock Holmes and Dracula. And Disney already won a case in 1988 with the Copyright Term Extension Act, which has been dubbed the Mickey Mouse Protection Act, which extended the rights from to keep the rights for another 20 years, which takes us to 2024.
Got it.
The expiration of copyrights for characters like Mickey Mouse and Batman are going to definitely raise, in light of this case, that's bound to happen, tricky new legal questions. Uncharted legal territories, as in the 20s when these laws were written, there were no such thing as mega characters. There was no stars in the 20s. There was no legacy in the 20s. So to copyright a trademark or to trademark a copyright becomes a legal question, as well as a legal loophole. There is the idea of a conceptual art as a copyright loophole, and copyright has all loopholes. It's based on loopholes, actually, and you may remember a loophole that led to Walt losing Oswald the Lucky Rabbit in 1928 to Universal Pictures, thanks to a contract loophole, sneaky, distributor, and some less than loyal studio staff members. The copyrights to Superman, Batman, Snow White, and early Looney Tune characters will all fall into public domain between 2031 and 2035. And the Mickey legal battle will set the precedence moving forward. And that is interesting.
Yeah, I without getting deeper into that because that's a conversation in itself. But
I paraphrase the legalities. That's it.
I'm not worried about that. It's the reason why we have a new Mickey, by the way. It's the reason why the new Mickey shorts were created. It's the reason why you see Space Jam 2. I think who did I hear that from? I can't remember. I think it was Jim Hill. He was talking about it. That they do these things in order to create new versions. They're not the same as before. It's a different version of the same character. They look different in some ways, and that helps to extend the copyright in a way. So I'm not worried about Mickey losing his copyright.
Oh no, neither am I at all. I totally agree with that. And I say that in here with all the different later incarnations, and there are many. The list is much longer than you can even imagine. And it's funny because we don't even notice a vast majority of them. But it's very subtle, and it's good. It's just a topical conversation. It just so happened that the trademark happened this month.
Yep.
But mailbag, David.
Let's do it.
Love
mailbag.
I love a mailbag too. Angelica, thank you for your question. David, if you could choose, would you rather have an ideal Tomorrowland or an ideal Westcott at DCA?
I can only have one.
You can only have one. You have to have one or the other.
Boy, I sure do want an ideal Tomorrowland, but I've got so much FOMO and jealousy over Epcot because I think Epcot's a super cool thing.
Right.
I think I would take Epcot first. I mean, I've been living with this Tomorrowland for my life, so I'm kind of used to it, but I'm not used to not having Epcot or Westcott. So yeah, I would take Westcott.
It's always difficult for me to answer the world. I almost said World War. I don't know why I almost said World War. The Disney World. It's difficult for me to answer the Disney World and the World War II questions because I've never been there. But to a person almost, when I ask about the parks, the 4 parks in Florida, they always talk about Epcot. So I think I would love to see a Westcott at DCA just because I want to know. So, But to answer this question for me, I just feel like an idealized Tomorrowland. But the weirdest thing about that is even in my mind's eye and my imagination, I don't know what I'm looking at. So even though I've never seen Epcot, I also have never seen or don't even know what an ideal Tomorrowland is.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I can tell you, Ron, that when Epcot is when it's fully operational or whatever, not like it is today, Epcot is the center of it is the reason to go to Walt Disney World.
Right. I hear that from everyone. I want to go. I'll be going this year. Well, yeah, I'm sure I will. I'll do it. I need to do it. Thank you for the question, Angelica. And Jordan Grooms now asks us, what changes that have been made as a result of the pandemic do you want to see Disney keep?
Well, it's funny when we were first in the middle of it, I was like, hey, I kind of like this social distancing thing, because I like my personal space and I don't like people being in my personal space. And though that 3 feet of space was just like, oh, thank you. Yeah. But that 3 feet wreaked havoc on how the parks operated, and it wreaked havoc on capacity. It was the reason why you have limited capacity, because everything had to be 3 feet apart. Was it 6 feet or 3 feet? I can't remember anymore.
6.
6 feet, yeah. So that would have been but I can't think of what. Okay, you know what I like? I kind of like the way we meet characters now. I like the idea where it's just you just kind of run and gun it. You kind of go up there, you say hi, you take your pictures, and there's no real queue and there's no real order. You just and the characters are very good at like, hey you, and then hey you, and hey over there, and this, and they're doing that whole thing. And it's not like, I don't know. I enjoy it. I am far more engaged with characters today than I was pre-pandemic.
Yeah, that was a great adjustment on the fly that they did with the characters when they first brought them back out. And I love that they did that. I don't know. It's funny. I didn't put a lot of thought into this just because I missed it. But but I honestly, off the top of my head, I can't really think of any changes that they made outside of the things like that you mentioned, really. I mean, I don't know what they did that I would like. Like I don't like the park hopping experience being 1 p.m.
The reservations.
The reservations. Like I don't want any of that in a perfect world. So I don't know what they did that I would want them to keep, but I suppose you could just say the fact that they retrained all of their cast. I don't know. I can't. I don't know. I don't know what they did. I don't know what they did that would warrant, like that would affect me, make my experience different enough. Right. Yeah. Thank you for the question, Jordan. Christy Nicole 85 asks us, David. Actually, this is a 2-parter, so I'll give you both of them. What's your favorite meal at Blue Bayou? And I'll let you answer this. How did you both meet?
My favorite meal, well, it wasn't really the meal, but I have a singular memory of getting the jambalaya. It came with the meal. And I had never like, oh my God, is this real? Is this jambalaya? Is this how it's supposed to taste? It was fantastic. And I've been trying to chase that dragon for years now, trying to find jambalaya that tastes as good as it did that I had at the Blue Bayou. I'm not a big fan of the Monte Cristo. It's too much for me. I can't eat all that. And it's just too sweet, at times. But anyway, so I would say the jambalaya. How we met, if I recall, Ron, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you stalked me on the Mark Twain. Is that right?
I don't know. I drank heavily in those days.
No, I remember meeting you and Champ on the Mark Twain at least the one time, and then I think we met again at downtown Disney, walking into the park. And you just like most interactions that I have with guests, or fans in the park, it's just real quick. Hey, we watch your show, that kind of thing, and we're fans or whatever. But it wasn't like a lengthy conversation or anything like that. It was just kind of in passing. And then again, like we had the same thing. We had the same thing happen at downtown Disney, and then I put out how our current relationship was born out of me putting out a call for help, basically. And I said I need somebody to help me out with some things, and you answered the call
with a riveting email. Of course, I'm joking entirely. Yeah. So I second everything you said about Blue Bayou. I completely agree with the jambalaya. I've had jambalaya prior, and I love jambalaya. But the fact that it's like New Orleans, and that's the menu. You're at the Blue Bayou, especially if you're sitting in the reserved seating by Pirates of the Caribbean. It's so amazing. Like of course they have jambalaya, because how could they not? And it's delicious. I absolutely love it. And I feel the same way about the Monte Cristo. Even though I love Monte Cristos, it's a little bit too rich, and it's too much for me. It's too much. Yeah, we met essentially like that. I had started doing research on Disneyland because I knew I was in a relationship at the time, and we started going to Disneyland a lot. And of course, I want to be well versed on everything. And my experience was all growing up as a child. So I started doing massive research. I wanted to know every single thing that had changed over the years. And I started doing research, and somehow, I've never watched YouTube before in my life, but somehow went through the research, FreshBaked popped up, and it was construction video way back when. So I felt like I was getting insight onto things that people didn't know yet and what was coming. So I could seem smart when I'm talking to my girl. And that's really what started it. So then, of course, I ran into the gang, as it were, and several times, because it's also coincidental that we are Saturday park goers. I go every Saturday, and so did FreshBaked. So I would go there sometimes by myself, sometimes with Champ, sometimes with her, and I would run into David. And I just started saying hi every time, just saying, "Hey, David," or, FreshBaked or something along those lines. And it happened so many times. And then the reason you remember the Mark Twain is because Liz saw my elbow tattoo of Simply Meant to Be Jack and Sally, and she was there when I had met her previously as well with you. No big deal, just hellos, that kind of thing. And that was really, we had an actual conversation that time. Yeah. And cut to, hi every time we pass each other, just say hi several times over. And then you sent out the email, and just kind of went from there. And funny how these things happen. Yep. So, Christy, thank you for your question. That will do it for mailbag today. A little bit abbreviated version because sometimes I ramble, and that's what just happened. Have we rambled? I have a stream of consciousness where one thought leads to all sorts of other things. David, not mailbag. 5 things Disneyland. 5 things. This week, your favorite 5 entertainment things all time, but cannot be a ride.
Well, that makes sense. Sure. But this is so it could be extinct stuff too, right?
Yes. That's what I meant by all time.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start with something that is extinct. And I've referenced this in the past. The Big Thunder Ranch, the Jamborees, the 3 things. It was the Jingle Jangle Jamboree is the one I can remember the most. They did a Halloween thing, they did an Easter thing, but those seasonal events that they held at Big Thunder Ranch, I want to say I miss them, obviously, because they're not around, but they were great. If they were around today, they would be in my top 5 things to do in the park, in general, if they're around. But some of my favorite memories, some of my favorite times being at the park occurred at Big Thunder Ranch, and the Jingle Jangle Jamboree, and the Halloween event and the Easter event. Great times at those events.
That's as hard to say as gummy berry juiced.
I know, right?
I know it's funny because I started thinking of these things, and as I was doing it, all the things that we had kind of talked about a little bit differently when we were talking about extinct things. I'm like, man, a lot of these could work.
Yeah.
And that's the hard thing with these lists is there's so many, but just for the sake of the game, we need to come up with just 5.
Yep.
My number 5, I was gonna do what you just did and go with Country Bear Jamboree.
Oh yeah.
But I did not because I went with Captain EO.
There you
And
go.
we touched on it earlier, and I distinctly remember that 10-year-old boy in me. I was blown away. I really was. It was so much fun. It was me and my cousins. It was, hey, for one thing, it had never been done before, so don't act shocked. It was a 10-year-old boy with all these crazy things going on, and it just felt magical. It was really, 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 really cool. And the buzz in the parks and the buzz of Michael Jackson at the time. So maybe it was just a new thing, but there was a lot of new things in the late 80s at Disneyland. But it was Captain EO.
Yeah, like a lot of things nostalgic. Seeing them again through an adult perspective might change your opinion on that, I think.
I agree.
Yeah.
Same with Country Bear Jamboree for that matter.
Yep. All right, number 4. Okay, I'm gonna go old school or an extinct event, and I'm gonna go Legends of Frontierland, which was just 1 year. They did it just for the 1 season. Do you remember that at all? Legends of Frontierland?
I don't think so.
It was basically it was a cosplay event in Frontierland where they had actors walking around the streets, and you were pretending to be citizens of Frontierland, and there was actually a whole rivalry between Rainbow Ridge and I forgot the other city, whatever the locale is, but it was fantastic. It was so good, and I come to find out later that if I understand correctly, if I understand my how it was communicated, that was a beta test for Star Wars, for Galaxy's Edge, or that kind of experience, to see if guests would interact with people on the street like that. Now which is interesting because today, if you were to ask me about Galaxy's Edge, I'm like, no, I don't want that. But man, did I love Legends of Frontierland! It was so good.
That is funny because that's as cringy as I can be.
Right?
I don't know what it is. It's something in my soul. The whole cosplay thing. Which is funny. I've been an actor. I can be an actor because I feel like if there's a camera on, it's a performance. But when you're talking to somebody for real and pretending something, I don't know. Like the cosplay thing, the LARPing cosplay, all that I struggle badly with. Just like a con. What can't I think of?
Comic-Con.
Comic-Con. Thank you.
I used the word cosplay incorrectly. You had the right word. LARPing is more like it. We didn't have to dress up or anything like that, but we did participate. They were dressed up, but you didn't have to cosplay. LARPing is the correct word.
Right. I appreciate it from afar. Let's put it that way. Like I'll watch it. I'll watch it if I'm invisible and you don't know I'm there and you don't try to get me to speak your language.
Right. It wasn't for everybody. It definitely was not for everybody, which is why they probably didn't do it anymore.
Right. I went with, my list is explicitly about what makes me over the top happy, and nothing makes me happier than Broke Hoedown Main Street Electrical Parade.
I knew you were going to pick that. I knew it.
I love it so very much. It's such a, look, it's been updated with Paint the Night, which is electric, which is the wrong word, sorry, which is amazing. I just like the original. No cover has ever been better than the original in music, period. So, and that's same with remakes and all that because of that original at the time, what it was, the achievement that it was at the time or whatever. And then when I hear it, the song is so like you can't get it out of your head.
Yeah.
So anyway, I couldn't leave it off.
Very good. I do love Main Street Electrical Parade. Absolutely. We've talked about that. Okay, so number 3, talk about things that make you happy. Dapper Dan's make me happy, and that's a thing that has endured at Disneyland for decades, to me it still amazes me that that's a thing that they do today, because that's when they talk about things. Nobody's into barbershop anymore. Like, that's not a thing. But yes, it is a thing. I love the Dapper Dans, and I love the way I feel when I hear them, and I don't have to watch them. Just walking down Main Street and hearing them in the background, knowing they're there, is as comforting as a feeling I will ever have at Disneyland, hearing the Dapper Dans on Main Street.
I am so happy that you worded it that way, because I was going to be a villain again without wanting to be a villain, because I love the Dapper Dans. However, I am uncomfortable when I'm being serenaded and they're 5 feet from me, looking me in the eyes, singing to me. It makes me uncomfortable. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they do that sometimes.
But I do love that. I mean, they are such a... Almost like when you think of the Mark Twain, the Dapper Dans are almost on that level where they are just present in the park, and you hear them and you see them from afar, and they belong. They're so perfect there. And when they're not there, there's a void for sure.
Yep.
My number 3... I could have went fireworks in general, and that would work. But just to be specific, just because I think their shows are spectacular. But like, Remember Dreams Come True.
Yep. I was hoping you'd say dream or remember.
Yeah, right. I just the going through the Disneyland attraction experience. The music is amazing. That was dubbed the E-Ticket in the Sky. Fireworks are super cool, and when they're done in again storytelling, I'm fascinated and in love with story. And even their fireworks show is amazing art, and it is amazing storytelling, and it takes you for a ride, and I could feel it. And it's what's not to like?
Yeah. Every modern fireworks show or nighttime spectacular that we know today was born of Remember. Because they realize, oh my God, they love hearing the attraction stuff in the fireworks show, and they're like, okay, we're just going to do that. That's all we're going to do now.
I know, right? And I will say I love the visual displays that they do down Main Street and on the castle. Just in all the shows that do that, Mickey's Mixed Magic does it. It's just cool. Like, it's a cool addition that wasn't there 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Or 30 years, I guess.
Okay, well, number 2, if we're talking about nighttime spectaculars, I'm going to go with Fantasmic. That's the thing that I love most about Fantasmic is how organic it is. It's a produced show, but they managed somehow, I can't figure out how they conceived of this, but to do a show in the existing space in the Rivers of America in New Orleans Square. It's not a show space, Ron. It's not show space. It's the park, and they just dropped an entire show in the middle of the park. Somehow, they have fit Fantasmic in there in a way that it cannot be. They tried to reproduce Fantasmic at Walt Disney World, but it's a fixed stage,
right?
And it's not the same. It's not the same. What they did with Fantasmic, the show is great, but for me, it's about being in that space and where they're holding that show that really impresses me a lot.
I agree with that big time. I agree with that so much that my number 2, David, World of Color.
Oh, okay.
I do know what your number 1 is going to be now, and I'm going to give you crap for it. I will say, like, World of Color for one thing is exclusively DCA, which is cool, but World of Color, I just appreciate it. Is a fun experience, especially for the first time. And interestingly enough, World of Color is one of those things that when I'm taking guests, friends, family to Disneyland for the first time, one of the things on my list that we must do is World of Color. I mean, obviously we haven't been able to do it since I was a child, but because it's been down forever.
Yeah.
But it blew me away the first time I saw it, and I see it
me too.
often. It blew me away. You feel water splash on you, the heat from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
The storytelling, the love, the emotion, the Disney music. Like, I was blown away, and I'm like, they're doing this with water and color and lights and the backdrop. I mean, the whole thing is really, really cool.
Yeah, World of Color owes a debt of thanks to Fantasmic, by the way. Because they have the fountain projections there at Fantasmic, but on a much smaller scale. But I have a feeling that that's kind of an evolution of that.
Art begets art.
Yep. And speaking of owing a debt of thanks, my number one, Paint the Night, and it owes a tremendous debt of thanks to Main Street Electrical Parade, obviously, because they share the same, music at the beginning. But Paint the Night is perhaps the greatest achievement in parade entertainment. It makes me feel a way that I cannot. And again, that has to do with the nostalgic love that I have for Burro Codown. In the same way that you do it, but for me, it's different. Whatever it is that they're doing with Paint the Night is different with that music, and it's not the whole thing, but anyway, it's sourced, as it were.
Right.
Paint the Night, without fail, makes me feel good. It makes me happy. I almost get chills, which is, for me, I'm a crusty dude. I don't get chills like people talk about getting, the hairs and whatever. I don't get, but I do feel that way for Paint the Night. I can't even get into just all the the lighting effect. I love lighting effects. Right. I love like neon and glowing things and popcorn lights and just anything like 100%. That is magical to me. Paint the Night is the single best thing they've ever created.
I essentially agree with everything that you just said. I absolutely love it. And when I put Main Street Electrical Parade, it was because you can't have both because it's 2.0.
Right. No, you're right. You're right. You can't.
And I just wanted the original in terms of for the list. But Paint the Night, as far as the show goes, it is spectacular. It's amazing. It's a way better parade than Main Street Electrical Parade. But it's also different eras and different worlds and different technologies. But Paint the Night is amazing and spectacular, and I do very much love it. My number one is Fantasmic. I think Fantasmic is everything that you said. The fact that you're watching the show out over the water makes it so much better than you can imagine, otherwise envision. Fantasmic is just great. Mickey's involved. You see the aesthetics. You're outside and you see the trees and the sky. Yeah. It's really it's really a crazy special show, and the space that it's in adds to its allure. Like just the whole aesthetic of it is just like this really, really special show and feeling to watch. And like you said, everything you said is on point, and I totally agree with it. So, David, that wraps us for the most part. Any closing thoughts on our conversation today?
I love Disneyland, Ron.
David, let me cut you off for a second. I love Disneyland too. I agree. Our sentiments are very much in lock and step. That's a wrap, David. Brings us to the end of the show, and thanks everybody for joining us on what was a really, really enthusiastic, enthralling conversation. We're booked. We were jam-packed with emotions, actually. Yeah. The whole conversation. And actually, I'll say this. It felt like it felt like the most moving conversation we've had, and I don't know why, but I felt it. I really, really felt it because we're just talking about this, how much of the things we love and appreciate, and I love being grateful in general for Disneyland and for so many things in our lives. So thanks for joining us today, everyone. As always, for taking time out of your day to listen to us. Watch us on YouTube if you so choose. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. And thank you, everybody, for all of the questions and the comments and the love and the support, because without you, we wouldn't be here. So until next week.
Amen. Fresh baked.
Yes, he recovered and nailed it.
All right, good show.